welcome to this panel. I am Dorothee Kalpen and this is Kian Yasti. We're very happy to be here at Classical Next and to introduce you to a topic that moves us very much. We want to share with you our experiences with that very topic, which is power sharing and empowerment, and why large and small institutions should team up. We would like to do the following: an introduction of ourselves in 2 different ways. And then we would like to describe a very concrete project so that we can underline why we think it's necessary to team up. And then we would conclude with, well, approximately 10 points in order to have a small guideline that we can give you to maybe help you with a similar project in the future. So as I said before, this is one of the first sessions of this year's Classical Next, so it might be cool to warm up a little because everything feels a little bit new and maybe we're still a little bit strange to each other, and surprisingly we've prepared something.
Yeah, as Classical Next encouraged us to do something interactive with you, we have a quick warm up for you. So before you get to know us, we actually want you guys to get to know each other. So therefore, we prepared 2 questions that we want you to ask each other. So the first question would be, which music piece brought you to classical music?
I have a task to fulfill.
Just go for it, yes. And the second question is, before we give you any input, is when did you feel empowered by making music, listening to music, or singing the last time? So you have like 60 seconds to talk with your neighbor about these 2 questions, get to know each other, introduce yourselves, and then we go on. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we have prepared another 5 questions for you that you can answer by hand signs to dig into the topic, and Dorothee will ask you the first question.
Okay, so listen closely. Who considers themselves working for a big institution? Hands up, please. I can see a colleague of mine. That's right. Right answer. Thank you.
Great. And the second would be, who considers themselves working in a small institution like an S? Oh, yes, that's it. Great.
And who has experience teaming up with the respective other kind of institution? Cool.
About half. Okay. Who thinks it was a good experience? I love it.
And who thinks they need another try? Okay, that's a very positive outcome. Thank you so much. I will sit down now because I have too many things to handle. Okay, so by now you know your neighbors a little bit. And I think, did you introduce empowerment now? No.
Not yet. I'm going to do that now. Actually, when we talk about empowerment, this is a term that comes from the civil rights movement in the United States. There's the term from, and I'm very happy to talk to you about the history after this panel, because this would be a panel by itself. So I'm gonna make it quick what we mean by empowerment and how this term evolved. Actually, empowerment means to have an impact when you've sent something into space. And like from a musical side, it would mean I rehearsed something, I put a lot of work in it, I go on stage, and then I get applauded to, which means I feel I can do it and I can do it again. And then I can climb up stair by stair. And at some point I might say, hey, I'm really good at this. I can do this by myself. I don't probably need another association to help me doing it. But some people might need some help to do that. And that's what we are going to talk about today. Yeah.
And now we finally introduce ourselves. And as said before, we will do it in 2 different ways. So first, we'll introduce ourselves on the professional level, and then afterwards on the personal level. And of course, we do that for a reason, but we'll resolve this riddle later on. So professional level, Dorothee, this picture is meant for me because obviously I work with Concerthaus Berlin. I'm the program director in that concert hall. It resides in a historic building, as you can see, in the heart of Berlin. It was built in 1821. It can look a little bit intimidating from outside and also from inside. It used to belong to the former east of Germany. It was destroyed heavily during World War II. It was rebuilt and reopened in 1984. And it employs 200 people. So 100 approximately work for the own orchestra, Concerthaus Orchester Berlin, and the other half belongs to the management. So just like me. Together we present approximately 300 concerts from like our planning management. Of course, the hall is also rented out, but 300 concerts are made by ourselves. Half of it performed by the orchestra and half of it is planned by me and my team in the program directorate. That means I am responsible for approximately 150 concerts per year. And that's a wild mixture, moving between the two extreme poles of very conservative, very regular there, and then wild and brave and new and innovative over here with new formats and concert designs that haven't been there before. So actually, this is a good characterization of the complete institution. So we always move between those two poles. I see my colleague smile. You can ask him questions afterwards too. So what we do is, of course, we try to reach different groups of society out there. As we all know, it's not simply the educated middle class that floods the concert halls anymore like before. We do develop our formats ourselves, new formats, and we try to contextualize the music in new ways. But there are habits and routines in our workflows that sometimes prevent transformation from happening. It's always an extra mile to go if you want to change something and if you want something new to happen. So we came up with a brilliant idea to summarize the situation in a slogan, which is in German, Kraft der Gegensätze, or the power of contrasts. So this is how we have to handle things within this historic concert hall. It can be very charming and it can be hell.
Well, I'm Kian. I'm based in Hamburg. I'm from southern Germany actually, and I lived in Berlin for some years. And before I came to the point where I am now, I worked with refugees of all ages. I founded a community art center in southern Germany with some friends. I organized concerts with people from all over the world who happened to move to Germany. It was a very lovely experience, especially in the years from 2014 and 16. And I worked for a music academy that provided free music lessons for refugee children from 6 to 19 years old. And then I need to fast forward a bit, and I am now at a kind of a different point. I changed sides a bit. I work on matters of representation in the classical music industry, and what you see there are some very different projects. I did this in last year, and they vary a lot, but they narrow it down to one point where it's about representation and about opening doors, actually. For example, on the top left, you see an evening where we went to actually more kind of a rock bar where they play a lot of vinyl, and I went there with a friend, Charlotte Ölschlegel, she's also here, and we played classical music for 4 hours, and this was such a wonderful experience on vinyl, as people were just sitting there and listening and were experiencing it on a very, very brilliant sound system. This was so fantastic. And then you see the opera I'm working on right now. It's called Migrantenexpress. This is actually a term from a right-wing journalist who called the trains through the Balkan in 2014 to 16. He called the trains Migrantenexpress. And that's actually also a facet of empowering to use these terms where you are discriminated and make them your own. So this is a pure POC cast we are having here, doing a interdisciplinary opera project. And then we have the Elbphilharmonie community project, like there and there. It's a very big thing where they open up and we fill the hall. So I designed that with two co-workers from Elbphilharmonie. I worked there as a freelancer. And then, of course, I founded a Lied festival last year with Julian Brigadier and Kate Pizzaroni, which is called Liedstadt. It's very new. It appears for the first time in Hamburg this year. And I'm responsible for the new formats and the widening of the repertoire on non-European music. Yeah, so that's me professionally, basically, and then we switch to a personal side, I say.
Actually, we do a detour.
Uh-huh.
Because we need to describe the project that is the small institution that we talk about in this panel, and that's the Al-Farabi Musikakademie. That's how we met. Kian is not with them anymore because he has so many other ideas, but we need to introduce it anyway.
Of course, I will do that. So I told you about the music academy I worked at, where we provided free music lessons for children from 6 to 19 years old. This organization is called Al-Farabi Music Academy Berlin. It still exists. It has its office in Kreuzberg, but we had to go to locations all over town, about 10 different places, because refugee shelters are usually not in the center of town, so you spend a lot of time in the trains to go there. And we tried to create options and opportunities for young people to participate. But that's not the only thing we did. We also provided music lessons for young Berliners who grew up in Berlin. And what we tried is to bring these different people together and to create these opportunities, to create these moments where they just make music, they get to know each other, and actually they just have fun. Children want to have fun. So fun by making music. And the team felt it was incredibly fulfilling to make children take over a stage. Sometimes small stages in a school or something, and sometimes very, very, very big stages. But to take over a big stage, you need to team up. Yeah.
Okay, so now we will proceed with the individual introduction. So you have seen my role as the Konzerthaus Berlin person. But of course, I'm still Dorothee wherever I am. I have been with Elbphilharmonie in Leishalle for 10 years. I have been with Ensemble Reflector, so completely different contexts to work in. So whenever or wherever I plan projects, I want to share the music experience with other people, no matter if they know something about it or not, no matter if they had considered this something for them or not. I am a very idealistic person, and I truly believe that the concert experience can lift people up, and that it actually makes people richer, and that it can change biographies. 2 examples are sitting here. That's why I believe in this so strongly. I am, of course, well aware that the classical music concert is an endangered species. So what I want to do is to save it, of course. I want to save what I love. And in order to save it, I need to change it. But when I change it, I need to do this without betraying its core. So this is actually what I have been working on for the last 15 or even 20 years. This is what drives me. And this is my personal Bible. I wrote it myself when I was really young, and I was so idealistic. I was not destroyed by all the pragmatic things that happen on the way when you're in the job. And sometimes I have to take it and look something up and say, yes, that's what it should be like, even though I'm in this professional context now. So this is how I work, or how my head works, so to say. And we all know that for too many decades, the classical concert has been a closed shop, and it had shut its doors for a large part of society. And what I really do hate are closed doors. So I need to find the key to open the doors up for different parts of society, to let them participate and try this, and then let them see if it's something for them or not. But I need to prepare an access so that they can at least decide if they want to experience this again or not. And then I always have this picture in my head that the institution I work with should behave, if it happens in the best way, like a good neighbor. a good neighbor who cares about the people around them. In German, we would say über den Tellerrand gucken. In English, the direct translation would be a little bit funny, to look across the plate, which means that you should not be wearing blinkers. So a good neighbor who asks the people around them, how are you doing? What is it that bothers you at the moment? And what can I do for you? So in my idealistic way of thinking, this is how also Concerthaus Berlin should behave. And these are the guidelines for me, no matter where I work.
Until I was 18, I was in touch with classical music for about 30 minutes a week, because my grandparents paid for my piano lessons. And we had no money, so my grandparents paid it. And then something happened in school. When I was 18, I heard a recording of Schöne Müllerin, actually. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become a classical singer. And then I took singing lessons, and I think my teacher panicked. I was like, I'm going to go to music university. And apparently this wasn't as easy as I thought it is. You can't just decide to work in the industry. I'm the son of an Iranian refugee and a social worker. I had no clue about classical music at all, except these 30 minutes. And I really know what it feels like to get in the industry as an outsider. I didn't knew all the social codes. I have no background. I have no three generations of musicians playing in the orchestra. I just was inspired by the music. And if I'm talking to my friends in southern Germany, they actually don't care at all about what I do. They just don't care because they don't feel addressed. They actually think it's none of their businesses. The thing that thrives me most, they just don't give a thing. Okay? And I asked myself, why is that? It is because they don't feel addressed. And I don't think everyone has to participate in classical music. I don't think everyone has to go to concerts or anything, but I think everyone has to decide by themselves. This is what thrives me, because this music inspires me so much. It makes me passionate. It makes me laugh. It makes me love. It makes me angry so many times. And but still, I feel good around here. And yeah, so what thrives me is that I want to create momentums and opportunities for people to choose, to decide by themselves whether they want to participate or not.
So I guess you now have seen that we share quite a large common ground, no matter where we come from or in which context we work. And so how we met was one of those cases when I was looking out for the neighbors and Kian was in the right place. And what we're going to do now is to introduce you to the project that we organized together when we got to know each other. And we would like to share with you what we learned through this project. And as we are in a cinema, we need to watch a movie, of course. And this is how we start with the project. It's the Carmina Burana, sung by and performed by very different participants. So it looks so like a natural thing to happen. What you just seen there, what wasn't natural. So we started with the result, but now let's go back to the start. And then what's interesting is to follow the path between the start and the end. So let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, Concertos Berlin presented two artists as so-called artists in residence, meaning that some high-class, internationally renowned, quite young artists come to Concerthaus throughout the season several times to present different concerts. And in this year, it was the Jussen-Brüder, the Jussen brothers, playing the piano duo, really great people. And their agent suggested as the big finale, Carmina Burana. And I thought, okay, why? And as the big final, really, as a highlight. So yeah, it's great music. I loved singing it myself. But I needed to ask myself, for whom and why now this piece? And I was also feeling a little bit unwell presenting this piece just plainly without any critical approach, because the role of the composer Karl Orff in the Third Reich is unclear, at least dubious. And I was feeling unwell presenting a piece that hails the Western European culture without questioning this extremely hegemonial perspective, and to do so at a time when we all should be a little bit more sensitive to topics like this. So everything in me was reluctant, but I didn't really have all the choices on the matter, so I knew I wasn't able to cancel the Carmina Burana, and some factors were set. So the soloist would be Lukas and Arte Jussen, and it would be the version performed with percussion and not orchestra, so it would be the percussion section of our own orchestra. Great musicians, everything fine, but really not out of the usual, and somehow I didn't want to do it that way. And sometimes you have to take what's there and work with it, and so what I did was start to look for the rooms that I could use to develop a different context, or perhaps a surprising context. I really wanted to send out the message that this masterpiece of Western European culture is not owned by Central Europeans alone. So I was looking for a choir with different heritages, with a different background. And there were the Al-Farabi children's choirs. So there had been a cooperation between Concerthaus and Al-Farabi before, but it was a little bit sleepy, if I might say so. It had never taken place on the big stage. And so I reached out for them, and teaming up with them started a complete process of rethinking this concert and also this piece of music.
So back then, I wasn't that deep into cultural institution. I mean, I worked for a bunch of them, and I had like very specific tasks, so I didn't know the overview actually. I was leading the music academy I already told you about, and together with the board members, and it was our main goal to go for the space in between. So we wanted to bring these kids together from the different locations I told you about before, and wanted them to realize, oh, we're just a bunch of kids who happen to come from different countries. We are the new Berliners, and we make music. That was our goal. And for this experience, we created different opportunities and different happenings. And sometimes they were like bigger, like weekly workshops or something in the holidays, summer holidays, for example. And sometimes they were smaller, by just small rehearsals at the schools. And sometimes they were like really big when we went to Concerthaus to perform there on the big stage. Yeah.
So we had the Al-Farabi Musikakademie as a choir. And so I was really defiant to let the old Western European text stand alone. I didn't want to have the children from all different backgrounds be on stage and then think this is the only culture that can be performed in this venue, in this old hall. I wanted to make clear that other cultures have existed as long or longer, and that they have also produced the most impressive and beautiful texts or songs that are delivered to this day. So what I did was I looked for vocal soloists that also belong to the piece, Carmina Burana, of course. I looked for soloists that could contribute another kind of song to the concert, an old song deriving from their respective culture, songs that deal with the same topic like the Carmina Burana, like love, friendship, longing, or the feeling that you have when you have eaten too much. These are so human topics, and this all connects us throughout the whole world and across cultures. So I wanted to interweave two so-called intercultural intermezzi with the rest of the Carmina Burana, within the Carmina Burana, and please don't tell the heirs of Karl off, because I did not ask. It worked well. So we had one song deriving from the territory that is now known as Ukraine, so old that there weren't any nations back then, and the other was a Hebrew song. And we put them, the singers, alone in the front of the stage, and shut down the lights, and there was just the single spot. And it was a very calm moment. It was very intense, and it suited in this big bombastic piece so well. It was like the still and calm highlight of the evening. So yeah, we changed contexts here. I still needed a big choir for the rest of the piece, and as the project had started to become a project that opens doors, just a regular professional choir seemed highly inappropriate. It's a very strange thing to say as a professional concert manager, but I needed a choir that could carry this thinking on. And so I asked the choir of the Berlin Humboldt University to join. They are something like a cross-generational choir, because they're the students and they're people who stuck with the choir since they were students, so they have grown old with the choir, and the people come also from all kinds of cultural backgrounds. And then we needed a conductor who could prepare a common ground for all these very different participants. We have old and young. We have people who have lived in Berlin for all their lives. We have had people with migratory background. We had, did I say professionals and non-professionals? Yeah. And so we found Franziska Kuba, and actually I think we have a picture of her somewhere. It's over there. Yeah, there she is. She did a great job. She is now professor in Detmold, and I can really recommend her if you have a crazy project in mind where you have to work with very different groups on stage singing. Yeah, contact her. She's great. And I think now, oh yeah, I need to say that, of course, before I arranged all this, of course, I talked to the Jussen brothers and to their management and to my general manager, and I tried to convince them, and what I found was openness, which of course was key, but I knew that they did not imagine at all what all of this would mean. So I was clear about the fact that I need to reward this openness in order to make space for other projects like that to follow. It really needed to succeed. So as you can believe, there was quite some pressure on the project, although it was still somehow flying under the radar until it came true. But it must not fail. That was the message. It would be part of a series that is rather known for its very regular concert, more oriented towards the mainstream repertoire and also mainstream formats. And so that was what the audience would, what they would want to listen to, or what they would expect. So for me, it was quite exciting to see how this audience would react to that project that we sneaked into the series somehow.
So as you can imagine, I didn't know all this. Let's take a quick look on the structure of the matter from my side. What I really liked about the project in the first place was that it put a focus on intersections on so many levels. I really liked it, and I have to read it that I don't forget anything. There were two high-class international soloists together with professional singers and the musicians from the concert house orchestra. So already an intersection on the professional level. Then we had professionals, non-professionals and semi-professionals, like the different choirs and the orchestra, of course. Then we had old and young, especially in the choirs. Then we had refugees and non-refugees. Then we had big cultural institution and small NGO. We had Berliners and non-Berliners, and we had Western classical music and the intermezzi Dorothy talked about. So actually this was a project of my taste. I really liked the idea of these different spaces and communities, this, not communities, opportunities this whole thing was offering. So as I told you, working for Al-Farabi, my main interest was to create moments of joy and empowerment. That was it. So I needed to make sure that from a structural side this was possible. And indeed, through musical participation, of course. That was the cause of the organization. To be honest, to create a moment of joy and empowerment, you do not necessarily need a big institution. You can do that in very small places, small halls and everything, but it changes something if 40 people applaud to you or if it's 1,400, like in the big hall of Concertas Berlin, as you saw before. Because I don't know, when you think back to your school time, we have all these special moments we still remember. Like it was 25 years ago, but we still remember it as it was now. And the humming is gone. I love that. And we still remember it as it was now. And actually, I was looking for this special moment for the children to realize that they are part of this whole thing. And this was given, actually, yeah.
So as you can see, it suddenly became a community project without being labeled as such. I like that very much. The standard repertoire Carmina Burana became a special project providing room for the encounter of very different parties, as you've just mentioned. And they were entering the stage not in a niche. It was not labeled, this is educational stuff. I personally love education, but the thing is, it's always, well, it's not happening on the main stage, something that we dearly need to change. So they were presented in the most prominent context, and the concert at the end of the season in the summer on a very hot day, it was packed. It was packed with different kinds of audiences. It was, of course, family and friends of all those different amateurs. And it was fans of the Jussen-Brüder, and it was fans of the repertoire. So a wild mixture here too. Kraft der Gegensätze, there we are again. It was a very touching and energetic atmosphere with applause between all the movements. It was like a rock concert, and imagine that with the Carmina Burana. That, I mean, well, I think all of us here in this room have heard, I guess. And just to tell you a short story, a few days before we as Concerthaus Berlin, we had our official final of the season. It was one of those rather tame concerts, big symphony orchestra, the chief conductor, who was in charge back then. And then after this Carmina concert, the colleague who had arranged and organized the other concert, she came to me and said, well, I wouldn't have thought so, but to be honest, this was real final of the season. This was the finale, the big grand finale. What an atmosphere. And for me, this meant a lot because, as I said before, the project had been flying underneath the radar in the hall. No one was really taking this seriously. Everyone was just seeing how much work this produced. But no one could imagine what it actually meant. Like, this is also about the power of what happens on stage, the aura in the concert, and then the togetherness of the people on stage and the audience. It is almost impossible to describe what happened there. And I was very happy that my colleagues went there and witnessed it. And then afterwards, they could imagine what projects like this actually mean. Okay.
So I felt this pressure as well, actually, but from a complete different side. And I think this is something we all need to think about when we are teaming up, that like these big projects, these really representative projects, they might come with a bit of pressure. So I just want you I just want to tell you what I was dealing with. Actually, at first I had to convince my board and the other teachers and the social workers, but that was not that difficult because we had this huge experience for the kids, and this was our focus. We had a big project. We had a lot of media, which is actually very important for the funding of such a small organization. We also have the label of the Concerthaus, which makes us a legit organization. So this was really easy to convince them. Hey, let's go and team up for that. And then I also needed to check whether structure and matter were fit, and I already talked to you about these intersections. So there, I also I was also fine with that. But then the next issue I was really worried about, because I needed to make sure that I wouldn't overstrain the mental, physical, and vocal abilities of the kids. Because what does it mean to overstrain a child's abilities? It's actually the opposite of empowerment. It concludes in the realization, hey, I'm not good enough for this. And this would be the last thing we want them to experience. So I really needed to think carefully on that. And actually, from your side, this was a really clever pick, this Carmina Burana, because in Germany, I don't know exactly how it is in other countries, but we have a massive lack of singing opportunities in school, especially in primary schools. So actually, children are not used to singing anymore. So like a 2-part choir or even a 4-part choir would be impossible for them to deal with. It just would be impossible. And in Carmina Burana, we just have these 2 small 1-part, actually more melody lines kind of thing. And so this, I really needed to make sure not to ask too much of the kids, and I didn't, because we had 1 year to prepare to learn these melodies. We had plenty of projects in between, and I could come back to Carmina all the time. So from that side, I was also safe. But still, I had to do some expectation management with the Konzerthaus, because of course, we wouldn't sound like a Dresdner Kreuzchor or like a Leipziger Thomaner or anything. And to be honest, we will sound okay. That was what I needed to tell everyone, like talking classical quality dimensions, okay, you know, but we could offer something that was really special, I think, because these kids, they never experienced something like that. So there would be an energy on stage that is unique. That's something we can offer. And I think when you remember the applause back then, this was something that transported to the audience. And it's also a bit unfair always, because kids and cats on stage, we know that always works. So from that side, I was also kind of safe, because I was a bit worried, you know, big hall, there come many expectations with it. And for the last part, I needed to make sure that this project is feasible, that it's doable for us. And actually, to be honest, it wasn't, but we still didn't, because we still did it, because it's so huge. We had to think of short rehearsal hours on stage, like in the last rehearsal, curfew for children, providing enough care stuff, then a consent form in Berlin signed by the parents, then it goes to the school, then it goes to the doctor, and then it goes to the youth welfare office, because we are performing on a professional stage. Then, of course, you have to provide food, drinks, and so on. So it takes so much time to organize all this, and you need the support of the parents. And these tasks are difficult with any children. But if you work with children from migrant communities or in precarious environment, this takes so much effort. But my old boss, my former boss, with whom I'm still in touch, always said, Kian, we have to go for the extra mile. We have to go for the extra mile, and that's something we did. So what I want to say is, if you want to realize such a project, you really have to go for it. It takes effort, to be honest. And then there was this task which actually worried me most. This was that I kind of needed to create a safe space for the children in an environment that isn't safe. So I just could try to prevent everything I could. So what we did was communicating so much. We were on the phone so much, and I talked to the Houston brothers in advance, and I talked to the conductor, and I talked to my board, and I talked to all the staff from Concerthaus and so on. And what we also did, and that was quite important, I think, in advance, we teamed up the professionals and the kids in advance before the official rehearsal. So Franziska Kuba visited our groups, and the singers visited our groups. So they became friends in advance, and they could feel like, I am part of this project, I can contribute. Yeah, that was like, there was a lot to deal with it, especially like on the communication side.
Okay, so now we've introduced you the project, and I guess, well, we all see what has happened, and I guess we all think it was definitely worth it. It would have been impossible to realize by Konzerthaus Berlin alone. It would have been impossible to realize by Al-Farabi alone. So what we did was putting together our respective expertise, and we created something bigger than we would have been on our own. Yeah. So to put it with Aristotle, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. But let's turn to the why. Why can't I do something like that on my own as the big money-flooded classical institution? Why do I need a small institution to help me create such an event? To keep it simple, because we're not in the 19th century anymore. That's the answer, I guess. We know the public concert used to be a revolutionary product formed by the middle-class citizens in their protest against aristocracy and clergy. I love that about the beginning of the classical concert. But it was a product made by the middle class for the middle class, and that's where the problems start. So it soon became packed with rituals that we still know till today, and packed with distinguishing social codes, excluding other groups of society. So what the middle class actually did was repeat all the problems and mistakes that clergy and aristocracy did. But still it worked well for quite a long time. But then the 20th century hit. Society changed. So it became pluralistic. It was just not the society anymore. And the sector for free time activities for these different groups of society grew. So the classical concert had two problems at once. So it lost its automatic audiences, and it got many other competitors on the market. And maybe you remember that 20 years ago, the classical concert was proclaimed dead because there were many studies happening. Maybe you remember Kulturbarometer, that was really central during these years, and the numbers were alarming, decreasing audience numbers, especially within the group age of people between 20 and 30. So to say, there were no renewable resources in the classical concert audience. And so what concert halls did was, of course, they took actions, different kinds of actions. They established more education as a cure against losing young audiences, and suddenly marketing and image and storytelling became more relevant, and soon it was also allowed at least a little bit to touch the holy ritual of the concert, to curate and design concerts, something that after Corona became even more important because we all woke up and we suddenly experienced what it is like to not have an audience at all. So that made us a lot braver. So all of these actions, of course, are necessary if we want to preserve the classical concert. And it's a complex situation with many tasks, but it actually comes down to just one point. If we want the concert to survive, it needs to become relevant for society. And the audience I do have now, that's not society. It's just a tiny little fraction of society. So how can I reach the rest? That's the crucial question. What can I do to get to know them? Who are they? And what can the classical concert do for them? That's also a very important question, because this is not only about us, it's also about them. So we really need to reach out. And actually, this is written down in something that's in Germany called öffentlicher oder kultureller Auftrag. I tried to look it up. Maybe it works as public contract. Maybe you know what I mean there. So if I receive money, public money for my arts projects, I should be driven by the idea to collect, preserve, and convey cultural content. But in order to convey something, I need an audience, because otherwise I cannot convey. So I need to make cultural participation happen. Everyone of society at least needs to have the chance to take part. So I need to address the different groups that are out there. This is the legitimization of our existence as the big, fat, historic institutions of classical music. I just want to add or clarify just some thoughts here. When we think about gaining new audiences, this is about idealism, in my case at least. This is not about pure audience development. I don't want to gain new audiences only in order to sell more tickets. This is not a mercantilistic view. I am driven by the idea that the classical concert must survive because it is precious, because it has something to offer. When thinking about new audiences, This is about sharing and not missionizing. I cannot and I don't want to force anyone into the classical concert. It's just about this opportunity so that people just have the choice if they want this or not, but they need to be enabled to have the choice at all. This is also about highlighting. This is about the focus on music and not about the pure event. So in German, I would say this is about Musikzentrierung and not Eventisierung. This is, again, my core thesis that I have been working on for such a long time. If I want to change the classical concert, I need to change it without betraying its core. So I always stay focused on the music. I always have to remember this when I also think about new audiences. And of course, new audiences are an enrichment and not a threat. And remember those contrasts in which I have to work in the Konzerthaus Berlin, these two poles, the conservative pole and the innovative pole. Of course, I encounter fears of the people who are really attached to the classical music concert, how it used to be or still is in many cases. So I need to tell them, if I want to create identification for plural audiences, it means I cannot move past their interests when planning. And this is not a threat. It enforces you to embrace new topics, and that automatically enhances your portfolio, which is a wonderful thing. So having said that, all of this, reaching out and building the bridge, I cannot do that on my own. I need alliances who help me build the bridge for two reasons. Me, as that old institution that is so slow and so stiff in many cases, well, when I say, hey, come to the classical concert, it can be really cool, no one will believe me because they don't trust me because of my history. But when Kian or Al-Farabi tell the children, hey, come to the classical concert, it can be really cool, they at least listen because they trust each other, because they know each other. Second point, our big institution may be an expert on many things, but not on all. And I have to admit what I cannot do and what I'm not experienced in. And that's, for example, the field of social cultural products or projects. There are people out there who have years of experience in advance. So I need to ask these experts to help me. Of course, I need to learn. And so I need to look for the experts that are out there. So if I had tried to organize a project like the Camino Burana on my own, it would have failed. So I needed help from outside, and it's good to admit when you need help. That goes for all our lives, right? In real life too.
So why should we have teamed up? Why? So if we're talking about power sharing, then the power sharing always comes from the people with more power, and power is money, publicity, and so on. So why would we have, as Al-Farabi back then, benefit from this whole collaboration and also the participant? And I think I already talked about this a lot in the panel. So actually it comes down to 3 points. Quite an important point is the communicational side to foundations. To receive money, it's really important to get the stamp and to have the publicity and to get the media. That's actually a bit bittersweet, but it is important. It is right now like that. Secondly, and I wouldn't underestimate this, it's a huge incentive for your team, because usually they are professional musicians and they like doing these big projects. They feel their impact. They feel, hey, we created something because, and that's the last part, what we want to do is actually, we want to create opportunities. We want to create special moments for children. And this is something where you really feel that. When I drive 3 times a week to a refugee shelter, 1.5 hours outside of Berlin, and I go there for a choir class for 30 minutes, then you know that it's important, but you don't really feel the impact. You just see it in the big picture. But in these projects, you really see it. And it's a very important incentive for actually your co-workers. I wouldn't underestimate this. And then we have a really, really big why. And I'm always very happy when it comes down in this panel to that one, because so many people actually don't know about it. And that's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I'm going to read it out to you. And I forgot to write it down, so I'm going to stand up. Article 22 and Article 27. 22 says everyone as a member of society has the right to social security and is entitled to realization through national effort and international cooperation and in accordance with the organization and, important, resources of each state, of the economic, social, and now important again, and cultural rights indispensable for his dignity and the free development of his personality. That's the first that's the first one we can rely on. And the second one, which is even more important and actually was quite new to me 3-4 years ago, everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. And I think it's really important that there is a human right not just to consume a concert, but to participate in a concert, to create your concert. And I think this is quite a big deal. So, and when we're talking about resources of each state, I just can talk about Germany. We quite have some resources in Germany. So if you take this serious, so much should follow up on this. And if you need some arguments for your CEO or something, and you put there the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it's really difficult to argument against that. It's really, really difficult. You have to be really good. So just take that with you. It's quite important. So to conclude, we'll talk about what you'll need. We'll give you a checklist, and Dorothee is going to introduce it, I guess.
Well, actually, I liked that you just stood up. I want to stand up too.
Yeah, do that.
You join me?
I will. I will.
Okay, it's the last 5 minutes of this panel. Endspurt. Okay, so of course we hope we inspired you to team up with other institutions, and we would like to share some of the learnings that we had during the project of the Camina Burana. And I can tell you that this was just the first project in a row. So there were other projects like this with Al-Farabi on the main stage in the very prominent context to follow this first project together, which is a wonderful experience. And it's good that you, that you can say, yes, we've had learnings and we actually learned something, because in the next, during the next times, we did it a little bit better, a little bit smoother. We were more relaxed. We knew about the obstacles, which is a very relaxing thing. So we only wrote down aspects that can be generalized. They're not too concrete, I hope. We just summarized 10 points as so-called principles of power sharing. Of course, this is just our perspective. You may enhance them. And we enlisted aspects that both touch the pragmatic and the more philosophical realm. And Kian will start with the more pragmatic things.
Yeah, it was so important for us to go through this whole project and to tell you about it, because it's really difficult to narrow it down in the end. But hosting and connected means to create spaces in which people can meet. I can't say the word intersections often enough. This is so important for this project. If you want to share power, you need to offer spaces where people can meet. And if you want people to feel welcome in your institution, you have to put effort in it. It's work. And especially in the first project we did together, I think you've done some more right now. And but especially in the beginning, there's no playbook. There's so much to organize: double communication, quadruple communication, double presence. That really takes time, especially in the first project you do. And you need rooms, you need rehearsal rooms. You need extra rehearsals. If you mix up so many different groups, and for example, such a project, you simply need more rehearsal time, because again, we need to communicate so much. And
it means that my manager cannot rent out the room, so they don't make money in that time, and that can also cause protest.
It does. And yes, and it means you have to convince the professionals, you have to book the rooms, you have to discuss with your business executive if you come from an institutional side. You might lose some money in that project. It's not cheap. Just because it's, for example, amateurs or non-professionals or semi-professionals, of course you don't pay the concert fee, but you have to pay for everything else, travel, food, and the amateurs are accompanied by professional trainers. Then we have extra fees actually for the professionals who came to the rehearsals in advance, who visited Al-Farabi in the suburbs and stuff. And it's very important to discuss this topic very soon in the project. What are your expectations? Because from a small institution back then, I thought, okay, this is Concerthaus. They have loads of money. We can earn something from this project because we need it on every end. Our calculation was 500 euro a year, and one child can receive lessons, music lessons, 500 a year. So that was our calculation. 10,000 meant 20 children. So we were just trying to get it on all ends, of course. And you have to talk about it in advance because you have to understand each other. Then I think I already talked about the time frames. And the last part is being the bridge. And this is, I think, quite important because being the bridge is not just from the big to the small institutions, but from the small to the big as well. I have to explain so much from where I come. So what is the effort for my organization? Tasks that don't play a role, for example, in Concerthaus. What are the tasks in Concerthaus that do not play a role for me in my small organization? I think this is really important to think of the picture that a bridge always is built from both sides. It's not just us going there. It's like always if you look how they build these videos, it always comes from both sides and then they meet somewhere. I think this is quite important.
So the sixth point would be quality management, but we could also say expectation management, as Kian had put out earlier. If you have amateurs performing on a professional stage, the quality of the product in the end, because of course it's still a product in a professional context, it's different, or it's another quality than what we are all used to witness on that kind of stage. But Kian has already outlined this. And I have already outlined that I was confronted with fear that we would endanger our quality or that we could chase away the core audiences. So this causes double internal communication. I had to convince them all. We all have to convince our internal groups, our colleagues. We have to tell the story over and over again. And to be honest, I have not been confident enough with this first try. Because this project was very poorly covered by the media, for example. It hasn't really been present. And as I told you, the others really didn't take it seriously. And I learned from that for the second time. And then it was a really huge media coverage. So yeah, things can get better in time. Next point, authenticity. Yeah, don't pretend something that you're not. I think that tells everything. It doesn't help anyone if you don't put your true expertise in the project. And you have to respect that the other institution has an expertise that you are lacking. Then power, as plain as that. Of course, if you team up, you give up a certain amount of control. So you should clarify who will tend to which responsibility beforehand, so there are no misunderstandings. The narrative is a very powerful thing, of course, and how you tell a story is a powerful thing. And this is actually addressing more the big institutions because they tend to overpower the smaller ones. Dear big institutions, you do not own the story when you partner up with someone else, and you cannot instrumentalize the small organizations. And then there's the last point where it all comes down to, of course, you're a team. There are two institutions, but now you are one team. And they crucially need to run into the same direction so that they also still work together and function when there's a crisis. And there are crises. We also had some crises that we lived through, and then we became friends. Okay, so you're a team in good and bad times, like a marriage, actually. Wait, the big moment.
The big moment, yeah. We prepared a special moment for you.
The last picture, we have prepared a small plaidoyer, actually, in this very last moment. So if a project demands all these abilities, it automatically questions the character of your institution. If you let other ideas, other work styles, other needs enter your house, this will challenge your institution. And this is a good thing, because then it has to move out of its comfort zone. And if it does so, it will learn automatically. In that context, I would like to especially encourage my colleagues from the big institutions, don't give up. Don't give up. We know that the big institutions react really slowly and that they are sometimes reluctant to transformation. And you just need to be very alert. You need to actively look for the rooms in which transformation can happen. And then you need to defend them. Be a lion, mom. Defend those rooms. Because there are these old habits lingering everywhere, and they are strong forces, and they prevent transformation from happening, as I said before. And I have just 1 minute to go. Talking about rooms, we, as the program managers, we are the gatekeepers. So we decide what happens on stage. We decide who appears on stage. We decide on repertoire, formats, participants. So we actually decide a lot when it comes to the classical or to the future of the classical concert. And now we would like to give you this thought for your way home on Friday when you go back to your institution. Please keep in mind, of course, it is the institution that sets the frame, but it is always the individual and the single person that can start the change and that can give a new shape to the frame that's already there. That's why we introduced ourselves on the individual and the professional level in the beginning. And this is where we end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.